Hey, you wonderfully made, God created people out there. Could the world's problems really be a distorted picture of God? After all, doesn't Revelation 12 state the whole world will be led astray by the great deceiver? Thought-provoking, wouldn't you say? Well, have you given any thought to why all the craziness? Have you ever thought that God may have a reason for allowing it? And the common question for many, if God is really there, then why all the pain, suffering, and death? Good question that surely deserves some answers. And it's not that the biblical scholars haven't worked on it, for their efforts have caused thousands of different word pictures and beliefs about God. Beliefs that just might warrant some scrutiny. It may even be safe to say that the great deceiver has been at work to cause as much division and confusion as possible. By the way, I'm Ed, founder of TimeToThink.us. That's not .com, it's TimeToThink.us. Inviting you all to think about what we've been led to believe about God. With the world being so upside down, it really is time to think, don't you think? It could even be time to shout, "Stop the world, I want to get off." But within the reality of such chaos, just think about it. With God being in the overall control, He must surely have very significant reasons for allowing all the craziness. Reasons that may have been hidden until now. This assumption came through as I was reading through the book of John, John 16:12, where the words seemed to jump off the page at me. As Jesus stated, He had more to tell us, but we were not ready to handle it yet. And putting the two together, all the craziness and John 16:12, it caused me to dig like digging for hidden treasure, where the discoveries came fast and furious, as if I was being fed with a scoop shovel. But in order to keep this short, I can only touch the tip of the iceberg with the most important report that God the Father that is not as His enemies have made Him out to be. I've been shown that the picture of God has been horribly distorted by the enemy in order to block any unity between God's created. And because of that, thoughts came through that the major issue within world problems is our picture of God, what He is like, and what are His demands. So to put this in proper perspective, think about it this way. If you were God and one of your lead angels took a superior attitude over you and others, how would you handle it? It could be shocking for some to discover that when Lucifer defected, thinking his ways was superior over God's, God created this world and gave him lordship over it to reveal to the onlooking universe that the attitude of superiority over others leads to a downward path of evil and death. So if you have eyes to see, ears to hear, notice how thousands of spiritual groups have taken Lucifer's lead in having superior attitudes over others, where each one is thinking they alone have the special truth. It's amazing how this special truth has most everyone believing in a certain person because of what he has done, serving from a stance of obligation and hero worship, instead of owning the godly principles that Jesus came to reveal. And not to take anything away from the Jesus we have come to trust, because there really is only one way to heaven, and that's to own the good news that Jesus came to give about His Father. It's mostly in the book of John, where it's stated that knowing God the Father that is life eternal. For knowing God is to be at one with the ways of God, to like, to love, and to own the ways of God for ourselves. Another one to put with that is Acts 16:31, where it's stated that God will save all who trust His ways to be right. Going on, Jesus said He had completed the work He was given to do, that of revealing the Father to us. And the reality of what Jesus meant could be summed up in how He answered Philip's question about the Father. "Philip, you've been with me all this time, and you don't know me? Anyone that has seen me has seen the Father." From there, it could be fitting to listen to Jesus' prayer to His Father, that we would become at one with them as He and His Father are at one with each other. John 17:21. Now listen, you wonderfully made, God-created people. It's time for the message that Jesus held back. It's time to have a humble willingness to listen to the words of Jesus as he prays that we would become at one, meaning to become at one with the picture of God. To realize that if we have seen Jesus, we have seen the Father. It's time to realize that God the Father would have washed a dozen pair of dirty feet. Yes, even the feet of the betrayer. And the final good news, just in case you didn't know, when we finally decide we've had enough of this world and are ready to listen, would you believe in the prodigal son story? It's God the Father running to meet you and me in our filthy rags. But with Lucifer, now known as the devil, roaming the earth from the beginning of time, has horribly distorted this picture of God to the point of having Jesus as the good guy, getting us past a perfection-demanding Father. Biblical scholars have worked hard in trying to stay true to this picture, but obviously they have taken many different roads, causing many different pictures of God. Pictures that if we were to really scrutinize them, we may discover why many have walked away from even believing that God exists. In fact, I'm absolutely struggling to find one iota difference from one distorted belief about God to the other. For one has God saying, "Love and obey me, or I'll burn and torture you forever in hell," while others have him saying, "Love and obey me, or I'll have my special chosen to torture and kill you." These concepts of God have to be nothing more than the deceiving works of the devil, working diligently from the beginning of time to distort the true picture of God. Lately, because of all the acts of terror in the name of religion, many analysts have described it in one word: ideology, meaning their belief system as a horribly distorted picture of God. So we shouldn't have to dig very deep to recognize the crafty deceptions of the devil, having wrapped his evil strategy in the finest of linen, as if dressing a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's being said because we must know that the devil has been alive and well, working his crafty ways in tampering with our spiritual concepts, adding and twisting words to forward his agenda. And if anyone is thinking that can't be true, we must not forget that God, in his mysterious ways, allowed about 1/3 of the angels to be deceived. After all, what better way for God to expose the deceptive ways of the devil if not to allow him to deceive? This is simply God's way of working to fortify us against ever being deceived again, as about 1/3 of the angels and Eve were. And if we were to really think about it, the whole world seems to have been led astray over the picture of God, just as Revelation 12 describes. But don't despair if what you're hearing seems to be taking a different turn than tradition teaches. Just remember that God will save all who trust him. The difference is trusting in the godly principles that Jesus came to reveal, instead of trusting that Jesus will get us past the alleged legal demands of his Father. And something else you may not have heard before is that Jesus said he had completed his work by revealing God the Father as being just as kind, loving, and forgiving as he. And just to be clear, Jesus is surely our Savior, all right, to save us from the distorted views of God. He also came to die for us, but for an entirely different reason than tradition teaches. We should know that things of this importance are sure to have been distorted into making God the Father out to be exacting, vengeful, unforgiving, and severe, all in the name of legal justice. So could it be time to realize that we are not in legal trouble with God, but instead we are in real trouble for going outside of how we've been made? For to go outside of how we've been made, God said, we'll surely die. Something like, if I were to put sugar water into the fuel tank of an automobile, most of us know the engine would surely freeze up and die. This is simply cause and effect, not an imposed legal penalty that the enemy has tradition teaching. So what do you think? Isn't it about time to think about what we believe about God? For it really is time to see that the devil's gig is up. The charade is over. It's time to expose his lies about God. And if your spiritual taste buds have been awakened, If you could be excited about seeing God the Father as being just like the Jesus we have come to trust, you're invited to www.timetothink.us. Click on View Books and do the reality check first. It's both in text and audio. And while you're there, you'll discover other titles such as What's This World All About Anyway?, The Ultimate Rest of the Story, Are We Sure We Know God?, and a few more. See you there.